되니까.
그때 연락해. 채가 나오. 그때 연락해.
Welcome to my channel. This time we will review a new drama entitled When the Phone Rings. This drama tells the story of Paik Sa-Eon, the son of a famous politician who started his career as a newsreader before becoming the youngest presidential spokesperson. However, his perfect life is shaken by the kidnapping of his wife, Hong Hee-Joo, a sign language interpreter who has a past full of tragedy. Hong Hee-Joo has a deaf condition due to a childhood accident, but is able to build an inspiring career. However, their marriage, based on political interests and status, presents a cold and secretive dynamic. When Hee-Joo disappears, Paik Sa-Eon faces a big dilemma. Does he really care, or is he just worried about the impact on his political career? This is the beginning of a story full of mystery that explores the complex relationship between power, love, and sacrifice. Hong Hee-Joo is a sign language interpreter at a TV station. While she was working, suddenly there was news about the kidnapping and soon there would be a press conference from the presidential spokesperson, Paik Sa-Eon. Yuri, the news presenter, was so happy because she would see Sa-Eon, and they told Hee-Joo to come back. Sa-Eon is very admired as a presidential spokesperson, and he always shadows the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His articulation and voice are good. He excels in terms of appearance, trust, and ratings. The people where Hee-Joo works do not know that Hee-Joo is actually Sa-Eon's wife. And Sa-Eon gave an explanation for the press conference regarding the kidnapping by the Argan armed group. He announced to the media that the ransom requested by the kidnappers would not be granted, even though the hostage would be killed. However, the government will continue to try to save the hostage and make every effort so that incidents like this do not happen again in the future. At that time Hee-Joo saw it and then she raised her middle finger to Sa-Eon. What's actually going on between husband and wife? The wife until Hee-Joo behaved like that.
부디 한마음으로.
After finishing the press conference, he was still alert with various negative comments that might come. And when he returned to his desk, there were also many reporters who called his cell phone, but he ignored them. Meanwhile, Hee-Joo and her mother met with her mother-in-law. And her mother-in-law wanted Hee-Joo to stop working immediately, because there would be an election soon. Her mother-in-law wanted Hee-Joo to focus on supporting her husband, because actually her mother-in-law did not agree that Hee-Joo working. Because Hee-Joo's name and face could be exposed to the media. In addition, is Hee-Joo's selective mutism or inability to speak not getting better? But her mother-in-law felt that it might be better for her to remain mute. And her mother blamed Hee-Joo. If she stole someone else's man she should have done it well, because Hee-Joo apparently couldn't win Sa-Eon's heart. Her mother reminded her that she was the second daughter of the owner of the Changwon Dairy and the daughter-in-law of the presidential candidate. After that Hee-Joo went home alone by driving her car. She then listened to the radio discussing the news about the Argan armed group. But the radio station changed by itself and made Hee-Joo confused. Not only that, her car's GPS also had an error and suddenly her car couldn't be controlled. The brake pedal also didn't work. It seemed like someone was controlling her car and she drove her car erratically and then went off the road to her house. Suddenly her car stopped by itself in the middle of the road and she was still able to survive. But when she wanted to get out, her car locked itself and she couldn't get out of her car. She remembered the news of malware that was implanted in the vehicle navigation software. And it was a car hack that manipulated Hee-Joo's current vehicle and Hee-Joo panicked. At that time from outside there was a man who was watching Hee-Joo. The man looked suspicious and he approached Hee-Joo's car. Hee-Joo was confused who the masked man was and suddenly her car door unlocked itself. While Sa-Eon was working, he received a call from an unknown number and it seemed like it was a foreign number. Sa-Eon answered it and was curious who he was because it was a foreign number, but the man suddenly said that he would kill his wife. When Sa-Eon was a little shocked, the call suddenly got cut off because his cell phone battery was out. Then he called her mother-in-law to check on his wife, but they had separated and his wife had gone home. Then Seo-un asked his subordinate to track the number that called him. The man called Seo-un again, but Seo-un ignored it, because he was busy enough to answer the prank call. He asked the man to just kill his wife, don't just threaten, but do it. And it turned out that Hee-Joo was really in danger. She hearing that her husband didn't care about her and didn't mind if the man killed her. Of course it made the man angry and he strangled Hee-Joo's neck because the man really liked the victim's scared expression. The man asked Hee-Joo to realize that this wasn't a joke, but her husband thought it was a joke. Hee-Joo was very sad when the man thought whether Seo-un really didn't love his own wife or he had another wife. And the man was very angry when Seo-un ignored his phone. He stabbed the car seat until the knife hit Hee-Joo's neck. It turned out that the phone he used could only call Seo-un and the voice change was also automatic. Because he used a VPN, his phone couldn't be tracked for 10 minutes. Then Seo-un picked up the phone and said, not to bother him, go ahead if you want to kill his wife and call again when her body appears. Hearing the words from her own husband, Hee-Joo was really sad. She didn't expect her life to be that trivial in Seo-un's eyes. She then immediately drove her car fast and swerved her car so that the man couldn't be controlled. And sure enough, when the car jumped, the man fell over because he was not wearing a seat belt, while Hee-Joo was still able to control the speed of the car. Hee-Joo was very sad because she felt that her husband did not love her. Hee-Joo was already home. She took a shower and treated her own wounds. When she was preparing food, Seo-un came home and saw that his wife was fine. He said that he got a prank call threatening to kill Hee-Joo. But at home it turned out that his wife was still alive and fine. At that time Hee-Joo didn't care. She was busy preparing food for herself. Seo-un was relieved because his wife was fine, and according to him the caller was just a prankster who was scaring him. He asked his men to find a bodyguard for his wife, because now many people really want to bring him down. But even so, he wanted someone to protect his wife without revealing that Hee-Joo was Seo-un's wife. Then Seo-un's men talked about the British embassy event, that the ambassador's wife was deaf and they couldn't find a suitable sign language interpreter. So, Seo-un immediately asked for help from Hee-Joo to accompany him at tomorrow's event and to help him become a sign language interpreter. Seo-un also reminded Hee-Joo that this was not an event for couples. She was only needed as an interpreter, so don't misunderstand. Her mother called and Hee-Joo just listened because she couldn't speak. Her mother reminded her that the presidential election was less than a month away, so her mother wanted Hee-Joo to take care of her body. She also asked why Hee-Joo stopped coming to the clinic and hadn't gotten pregnant. Hearing that Hee-Joo then hid her cell phone, she didn't want to hear her mother's talking. 3 years ago, on the wedding day, Seo-un came to the bride's waiting room and told Hee-Joo that Hee-Joo didn't deserve to wear a wedding dress. Because she was just a substitute, Hee-Joo felt offended and tried to take off the dress in front of Seo-un. But Seo-un immediately covered Hee-Joo with his wedding jacket because he didn't want Hee-Joo to be naked. Then, he handed over the wedding vows for Hee-Joo to sign. The contents of the agreement included: the wife could not file a marriage proposal divorce, especially during the election period, and do not reveal Hee-Joo's name or face as Seo-un's wife. If one is violated, then Hee-Joo must pay a fine of 2 billion won. Then Hee-Joo signed the agreement with a sour face. Then Seo-un put the wedding ring on Hee-Joo's finger. He told Hee-Joo not to expect their relationship as husband and wife, because Hee-Joo was sent as his hostage. At the ambassador's birthday party, Seo-un waited for Hee-Joo, who did not come. Then her bodyguard apologized because they arrived late and Seo-un invited Hee-Joo to enter the party. Seo-un was warmly welcomed by the ambassador and the ambassador then introduced his wife, who was deaf. At that time Hee-Joo immediately translated So-eun's words with sign language, and his wife was surprised because So-eun's wife could sign language. But Hee-Joo explained that she was not So-eun's wife, she was just a translator and there was no personal relationship. The ambassador was grateful because So-eun brought a translator to his wife. But he was confused, why Se-eun never brought his wife? Then So-eun said that actually his wife also has a disability and he can't always accompany her. You could say that his wife is his weakness because he often gets attacked from various sides. You could say that So-eun is the official scapegoat of the government, so he doesn't want his wife to receive attacks like him. The ambassador immediately understood and he thinks So-eun is a romantic man because he cares about his wife's safety. After greeting the ambassador, Hee-Joo is seen drinking a lot until she is reprimanded by So-eun. Hee-Joo invites So-eun to go home, but So-eun doesn't allow it yet. He just wants Hee-Joo to stand beside him. Then Hee-Joo does sign language to So-eun. She feels disappointed with So-eun's attitude. Does he think Hee-Joo has no feelings? She was very sad and hurt by So-eun's previous statement that called Hee-Joo his weakness. Weakness is a wound that is about to be infected. When touched it will be shocked, tremble, guard it with all his might. But So-eun was not like that. When Hee-Joo was attacked yesterday and she called So-eun a jerk. Seeing Hee-Joo's expression, it seemed like he was being scolded by her. Hee-Joo continued that the wife she had just discussed might not be her. At that time the caller who threatened So-eun contacted him again. So-eun said it was a bit arrogant because she failed to kill her wife yesterday and he didn't have time to listen to his rambling anymore. Then the caller said that So-eun didn't have much to do at the party. So-eun was shocked because the caller could tell that he was at the party, that he was watching him, but So-eun didn't realize it. But So-eun felt that it was just a bluff. Then the caller laughed and proved that he was really around him. There was a bruschetta snack in front of him. So-eun was shocked because it seemed like the caller was right. He was at this party. He wonders who the caller is. How did he get in? Even the caller planned to hurt Hee-Joo at this party. So-eun saw a suspicious man and rushed after him. He followed the man who entered the men's toilet. He broke down the toilet door and it turned out that the man was on the phone with a woman. So-eun rushed to find his wife. He also said if she knew the caller was lying, because no one knew who his wife was. Suddenly the caller said that Hong Hee-Joo was not his real wife. His real wife is the person he should have married, his fiancée. The first daughter of the Daily Changwon, Hong In-a. She ran away on her wedding day and no one knows her whereabouts. Isn't it too much because he married her sister and made her a hostage? People will be happy to know that So-eun is a clean and great spokesperson, riding the two sisters like an elevator. So-eun felt very angry. What did the caller actually want? The caller conveyed his request to get rid of Hee-Joo and return to his real fiancée. It was surprising that the caller was Hee-Joo. It turned out she was not mute. On the night when Hee-Joo was threatened by the man, Hee-Joo was hurt by So-eun, who had underestimated her life. She was very angry and suddenly stopped her car. She asked the man to call him again. She shouted and called him by herself, but So-eun did not pick up the phone. She drove her car fast until she hit the guardrail, until the man was thrown and passed out. And it turned out that she took the cell phone and used it herself to disturb her husband. She asked So-eun to return everything to how it was before and she would not reveal the secret of his marriage. But So-eun just kept quiet and Hee-Joo panicked a bit because she had been calling for almost 10 minutes. Then she said to do it tomorrow or else pay 2 billion won. Then So-eun said if she wanted to threaten him, she should learn about him first. Because it was easy for him to turn a scandal into fake news. He could also get rid of a pathetic blackmailer with his eyes closed. Why did he involve the person he meant Hee-Joo? And Hee-Joo couldn't believe what happened to her yesterday. That she almost died. She was strangled and pulled by her hair and held a knife to her. She was really scared and she couldn't argue because she couldn't talk. And her car almost rolled over, and Seo-un felt very angry and slammed his hand on the concrete wall until it hurt. He swore he would catch her himself, and the alarm went off because it had been 10 minutes, and Hee-Joo hung up the phone. Did Hee-Joo succeed in scaring her husband? After deceiving her husband through a phone call, Hee-Joo came out of the toilet. She saw her husband and then walked slowly to avoid him. But Seo-un saw her and pulled her hand, and they entered a room. Hee-Joo was confused because Seo-un's face was close to her, and suddenly Seo-un asked Hee-Joo to take out her cell phone. He asked Hee-Joo to answer his question by typing on her cell phone. She asked if it was true that there was an accident last night and was Hee-Joo injured. When Hee-Joo was about to answer, Seo-un checked Hee-Joo's face and neck, which had wounds. Hee-Joo closed her eyes when Seo-un took off her shirt, and he saw the back of Hee-Joo's neck, which was injured. Seo-un was very angry because the perpetrator threatened her with a knife and also wanted to kill her. He couldn't understand why Hee-Joo didn't tell him about the incident, but Hee-Joo thought it was because previously Seo-un let the caller kill her. Seo-un asked his wife to always be guarded by bodyguards and then check her wounds at the hospital. After Seo-un left, Hee-Joo was relieved because she hadn't been caught. At home, Hee-Joo listened to the recording of the phone conversation with Seo-un again. She smiled because she had succeeded in making Seo-un afraid. It seemed like he was angry if someone touched his property. Hee-Joo had kept the cell phone for 2 days. The man would definitely be looking for it, so Hee-Joo had to hurry. Seo-un suddenly came home and asked Hee-Joo for her car keys. Hee-Joo quickly took them because if Seo-un opened her bag, then she could be caught. Because of the cell phone, she kept it in her bag. Then Seo-un checked the condition of his wife's car. There was a stab mark on the car seat. Hee-Joo realized, and she rushed after Seo-un because she was afraid that Seo-un would check her car's dashcam camera. Because yesterday she talked and cursed in the car, and she didn't want Seo-un to know that she wasn't mute. But strangely, her car's dashcam didn't record anything, and Hee-Joo was very relieved because there was no recording. Suddenly a motorbike almost hit her, and Seo-un swiftly pulled and hugged Hee-Joo. Then, Seo-un will buy her a new car and asked her to stop working. But tomorrow, there is a translation assignment in court, and Hee-Joo still wants to work, even though her mother-in-law wants her to stop working. She begged her husband to let her keep working. Seo-un agreed, but at least she had to bring a bodyguard while working, but Hee-Joo didn't want to look conspicuous. While having dinner with Seo-un, his mother asked Hee-Joo to stop working because she was too troublesome. Their marriage shouldn't have happened. But Seo-un felt that his family was the one who wanted a bond with Chang-won, even though he had to swapping the bride. His father could get to this point because of the Chang-won daily covered up his scandal. Then Seo-un asked his mother who knew the secret of his marriage besides his family, and his mother answered Hong In also knew.
범죄 심리학자로 활약하신
Seo-un checked the CCTV footage with her subordinate, Mr. Park, but they didn't find anything. Then, in the ambassador's party there was also nothing suspicious. Most of the guests were part-time external workers. In conclusion, they didn't find anything useful. Then Seo-un asked if Mr. Park had ever met his wife, and Mr. Park answered never. Seo-un was surprised, even though no one knew about his wife in this country. While in the toilet, Hee-Joo felt someone was following her. She was scared because a man had threatened her before. Then her bodyguard looked for Hee-Joo, but didn't find her. She then asked for help from other bodyguards to look for her. But they still didn't find her, and then she sent a message to Seo-un and told him that his wife missing, and Seo-un panicked. Then the bodyguard sent another message that they had found her and she was with a man. The bodyguard took a picture of her and sent the photo to Seo-un, and it seemed that Seo-un was a little annoyed. He told the bodyguard to stop taking pictures and just guard her. It turned out that the man was Hee-Joo's college senior, Ji Sang-woo, and he was also good at sign language, which allowed him to communicate with Hee-Joo. For 3 years Sang-woo looked for Hee-Joo and then saw her when Hee-Joo became a sign language interpreter on news television. Hee-Joo apologized for not giving him news and then Sang-woo asked for Hee-Joo's number. Because Sang-woo would work in the same place as Hee-Joo and they could communicate. Her mother went to Hee-Joo's house and gave her lingerie because she thought her daughter was pitiful. Hee-Joo wondered if her mother wasn't a pimp. It turned out that Hee-Joo agreed to marry Seo-un on the condition that her father could be treated in a good nursing home. And her mother asked Hee-Joo to maintain her marriage because if Hee-Joo made a mistake, her father could return to the streets. That was Hee-Joo's weakness and she could only follow her mother's wishes.
필사적으로 방어하게 되는 거.
Then Hee-Joo wore the lingerie. She was curious, after getting out of this prison, what her mother's expression would be like. And Hee-Joo terrorizes her husband again and asks if he has made a decision. Will he return to the beginning or pay for it? But Seo-un is still curious about how the caller knows Hee-Joo, even though everyone thinks Hong In is his wife. So where did the caller get the information about Hee-Joo? Could it be that the caller is near him? But according to her it doesn't matter, because she can bring him down. And according to Seo-un, he can't compromise anymore, because she has hurt his wife. Then Hee-Joo sends a photo of herself wearing lingerie, with her thighs showing. But Seo-un doesn't believe that's a photo of Hee-Joo's thighs. And she asks Seo-un back, how did her husband not know that his wife had a unique mole on her thigh? Is Seo-un not interested in her, or has he never seen her naked? And Seo-un is curious about 406, the caller's nickname. Is 406 married and when was his first experience with a woman? He thought 406 was a pervert who used fake photos to fantasize, harass and slander his wife. Seo-un knows his wife very well, so don't talk nonsense. But Hee-Joo thought Seo-un was just pretending to be her husband and it wasn't a fake photo. Unconsciously Hee-Joo asked Seo-un to check and make sure it was his wife's thigh or not. After that she regretted what she had just said to Seo-un. Seo-un went home and went straight to his wife's room. Hee-Joo, who was scared, hid under her blanket. Why did he come into her room? Then Seo-un pulled her blanket, but Hee-Joo held her blanket tightly. With all his strength Seo-un pulled her blanket until his body was above Hee-Joo and they looked at each other with very close faces. But Seo-un didn't do anything. He even told her that there was a job vacancy for a sign language interpreter that was suitable for Hee-Joo. Hee-Joo was confused because suddenly Seo-un wanted Hee-Joo to work near him. 3 years ago when Hee-Joo fell asleep at the dining table, Seo-un's smile saw her. After eating, Hee-Joo asked him to dance and at that time Hee-Joo closed her eyes, but Seo-un didn't seem interested in her. He told Hee-Joo not to keep feelings for him, no need to act like a doll in front of him. Don't do all of her mother's orders, because Hee-Joo is not part of his plan, so don't get in his way. When she woke up, Hee-Joo was surprised to see Seo-un watching TV at home. It turned out that Seo-un left at noon and he asked Hee-Joo for breakfast. But Seo-un cooked and Hee-Joo helped him. Hee-Joo was curious because it turned out that Seo-un could cook. Seo-un planned to give Hee-Joo a new bodyguard because previously she was missing in court. Hee-Joo explained that she was with her college senior and Seo-un was curious if her senior could be trusted. Seo-un thought Hee-Joo was just living quietly and obediently under his control. Then Seo-un took a plate and prepared an omelette for Hee-Joo to eat.
나 먹으라고.
Hee-Joo visited her father at the nursing home, but at that time her father was doing karaoke inside the room. Hee-Joo did not hide that she could talk in front of her father, but her father did not call her Hee-Joo, but Yan-Hui. It seems like he has dementia and calls Hee-Joo by her mother's name, Yan-Hui. Hee-Joo is very sad. When she became Hong Hee-Joo instead of No Hee-Joo, she has never been calm again. She pretends to be mute and becomes Hong in A's shadow. She no longer remembers who she is. Hee-Joo is really fed up and wants to stop. Previously Seo-un chatted with his reporter friend and discussed the caller 406, who sent a pornographic photo, and threatened the husband to end the relationship with his wife. According to his friend, it was definitely an affair. At first Mr. Park thought that Hee-Joo's car had been forcibly entered, but he just entered, as if the car owner had opened the door. Hee-Joo called again, but was immediately rejected by Seo-un. Then she called again, and Seo-un answered that if she wanted to talk then she had to wait, because a pervert like her had to be taught a lesson. She had to wait for another 5 minutes. While waiting for 5 minutes, Hee-Joo went to the convenience store. It seemed like time was passing very slowly. Hee-Joo calmed herself down, so as not to look anxious, but she imagined Seo-un sitting next to her, and then Hee-Joo realized. But when she called again, Seo-un still didn't pick up the phone. At home, Hee-Joo watched the news about a man who burned down a building, and previously the man had terrorized him over the phone. Hee-Joo was very shocked when she heard the recording of the conversation. It was her when she terrorized her husband. She didn't feel like she burned down the building. Then suddenly Seo-un came home with dirty clothes, like they had smoke marks. Then Seo-un approached Hee-Joo and sat her on the table. Lately nothing made sense to her. It was impossible that there was a side of Hee-Joo that he didn't know. He had to find out which side was real. Suddenly he pulled Hee-Joo's skirt, but Hee-Joo held her back. Then Seo-un asked whether to take it off by herself or will he do it. Before the fire incident in Seo-un's office, there is a food delivery man who came to the office. They didn't feel like ordering food, and when one of the staff brought the food in, suddenly when it was opened, the pizza exploded. Seo-un woke up in the hospital, and at that time Mr. Park accompanied him. The other staff were in the ER, and fortunately no one was seriously injured. Then Mr. Park showed the CCTV footage, and the perpetrator was seen carrying the pizza. But strangely the man waved his hand at the CCTV, as if mocking Seo-un. Then, Seo-un immediately checked his cell phone, and he was told by the guard that Hee-Joo had gone home. He then removed her phone line because he wanted to check something. How dare the man storm into his private office and blow up his team? Mr. Park asked him not to be reckless, because if he was involved, the reporters would know. But Seo-un still wanted to react. There were many ways to respond without having to reveal himself. When he got home, Seo-un immediately sat Hee-Joo down because lately he felt no one had come in reason. And right now, Hee-Joo is the only clue, so he asks Hee-Joo to cooperate. He carries Hee-Joo into the room and Hee-Joo asks if he is hurt. Seo-un just said there was a crazy man who sent a bomb to his office. Can't Hee-Joo guess who the kidnapper was who kidnapped her before? Hee-Joo can only shake her head, but Seo-un feels that the man knows him very well. Then Seo-un feels Hee-Joo's thigh and Hee-Joo closes her eyes because she's afraid of being caught. Hee-Joo pushes Seo-un and asks what Seo-un really wants to make sure of. The man kidnapped her and Seo-un is also injured, so why are they like this? That made Seo-un think that Hee-Joo didn't know what Seo-un was making sure of right now. Then he closed her thighs and apologized for making her uncomfortable. Mr. Park called Seo-un. He told him that there was a similar incident in the area before. The police called him a serial arsonist. But Seo-un felt strange because at that time, he was being called by the caller and at the same time, the explosion happened. He thought the caller had a partner in carrying out his actions. It seemed like they were so close considering the perpetrator knew Seo-un very well. And at that time, Hee-Joo listened to Seo-un's phone conversation. Seo-un asked for Hee-Joo's cell phone because it was possible that her cell phone had been hacked and he wanted to check it. He thought Hee-Joo was very careless because she dropped a glass, and Seo-un asked Hee-Joo to stay home while he checked her cell phone. Then Hee-Joo immediately deleted the photo of her thighs and turned off the power of the cell phone she used to bother Seo-un. There was a suspicious man who smiled when he sent a message about the fire at Seo-un's office. He got a message with a call from the master, and the master asked him not to act up from now on. And it seems like the master will give him a job. Seo-un was curious when he saw his wife's cell phone, then he opened the chat application. It turned out that Hee-Joo was sending messages to Sang-woo, and Seo-un opened their chat. Sang-woo was very happy when he met Hee-Joo again, and they seemed to have been in the same orphanage together before. The orphanage was called Nuri's Dream Center, and Seo-un found out about the orphanage. He also found out that they also planned to have lunch together this afternoon. Mr. Park reported his investigation and found a high-performance, liquid explosive device. And they didn't know about the voice changer the caller used, because of inadequate software. Seo-un apologized for involving Mr. Park in his personal affairs. But Mr. Park was just trying to help and thanked Seo-un for trusting him. Suddenly, Uri sent a message to Seo-un, and it seemed like Seo-un was thinking about something. It turned out that Yuri came to the same restaurant as Hee-Joo and Sang-woo. Yuri was surprised to see the two of them eating together, but Sang-woo explained that they were just college friends. It turned out that Seo-un invited Yuri to eat at the same place as Hee-Joo. It seemed like he knew, because Seo-un had read his wife's chat before. Hee-Joo was confused why Seo-un came there, and she hoped Seo-un would pretend not to know her. But Seo-un called her Hong Hee-Joo, the translator, and they were all surprised how Seo-un could know Hee-Joo. Finally, they sat at one table, and with attention Sang-woo gave her the plate that he had sliced the fish on. Yuri was curious how Seo-un could know Hee-Joo, and Seo-un explained that Hee-Joo had helped translate at the British Embassy. When Sang-woo wanted to pour a drink, Seo-un closed his glass because he didn't drink during the day. And Seo-un was a bit disturbed because Sang-woo could sign language, and Seo-un asked Sang-woo a lot of things, and he thought that Seo-un was interested in him. Seeing that, Hee-Joo was disturbed and asked permission to go to the toilet while Seo-un receives a call. Hee-Joo looks annoyed and takes Seo-un's phone and types why he was stalking her when previously her phone was only used to check for hacking. Does Seo-un suspect her of Sang-woo? Seo-un doesn't care about Sang-woo. For him, Sang-woo is just a loser who suddenly appears around them. If Hee-Joo knows him that well, what about Seo-un? Because they have known each other for 20 years. Suddenly Seo-un thinks that it seems like he doesn't know his wife that well. When he wants to leave, Seo-un asks for Sang-woo's business card. It turns out he is a doctor and he offers counseling for Seo-un. And Hee-Joo also apologizes and says goodbye, because there is an important call from the orphanage and she has to go there. When Mr. Park asks the police about the explosion incident at Seo-un's office, suddenly a trash can explodes outside the building. Mr. Park sees a suspicious man and chases him, and finally the man is caught. The police interrogate the perpetrator of the explosion, but he is not the one who blew up the building where Seo-un works. At the orphanage, Hee-Joo gets the happy news that she was accepted to work as a translator at the presidential office. But Hee-Joo doesn't like it that much, and suddenly she talks about divorce, because her husband hopes she dies. According to her friend, her husband is like that because he still loves Hee-Joo very much, because if a husband and wife want to divorce, they are actually indifferent. But Hee-Joo feels she has the right reason to divorce. Hee-Joo's car has been repaired, and when she presses the start button, the car won't start and the garage door is closed. Hee-Joo panics because her car won't open, and the radio suddenly turns on by itself, that there is a caller from number 406 who asked for the song Call Me Now. Hee-Joo is very scared and her breath is short. The security guard opens the garage door and apologizes because he thought Hee-Joo had gone out. Then the car can be started and Hee-Joo gets out of the garage. Arriving at home, Hee-Joo immediately turns on 406's cell phone. Hee-Joo thinks the man knows she kept his cell phone, and suddenly Seo-un comes home and Hee-Joo says she's going to the convenience store. Seo-un returns her cell phone and her cell phone is safe from hacking. When he finds out Hee-Joo wants to buy ice cream and beer, Seo-eun takes the initiative to buy it for her. Then Hee-Joo calls him using 406 cell phone. Hee-Joo feels Seo-eun is stalling and underestimating her. Seo-eun is curious about what the caller will actually get if Seo-eun leaves Hee-Joo. What is the caller's purpose in telling Seo-eun to divorce Hee-Joo? And Hee-Joo answers that Seo-eun did not marry her because of love, so it's better to leave her. But Seo-eun feels that the caller threat is only for the good of others. What is the relationship between the caller and his wife? Seo-eun won't follow the caller's wishes because he's just a crazy bastard who kidnaps, blackmails and even threatens with a bomb. And Seo-eun won't divorce her and then he hangs up. Seo-eun comes home with beer and ice cream for Hee-Joo. Suddenly, he says he won't divorce Hee-Joo and makes Hee-Joo choke. Whether it's because of a scandal or a rumor, she won't stay silent if it worsens his reputation. Then he wipes the beer stains on Hee-Joo's lips while saying Hee-Joo is always careless. Hee-Joo is curious why Seo-eun asked Hee-Joo to work by his side. If she becomes a translator at the presidential office, then the whole world will recognize her face and name. It's better if they look like strangers, but Seo-eun hates that. But he doesn't like what the caller said to be true. He plans that what the caller said is not true. Then Seo-eun goes into Hee-Joo's room and sleeps there. He asks Hee-Joo to lie down because he doesn't bite. Hee-Joo still doesn't move and Seo-eun thinks Hee-Joo is afraid that he will get on top of her. But Seo-eun feels that if he wanted to, he would have done it a long time ago. Then Seo-eun thinks, is Hee-Joo afraid that she will be the one who gets on top of Seo-eun? Hee-Joo gets annoyed and takes Seo-eun's pillow and then Seo-eun sleeps facing Hee-Joo. He forbids Hee-Joo to turn away from him because it's rude. Then they both sleep facing each other. Because his office is not safe, Seo-eun thinks his house is not safe either, but tonight he wants Hee-Joo to sleep soundly. Whatever happens when Hee-Joo is kidnapped, just think of it as a nightmare. Likewise with what Hee-Joo heard, forget everything and don't think about it. And when Hee-Joo was asleep, Seo-eun looked at her and then left the room. When Hee-Joo was teenager she had an accident and her mother cried and was confused about what to do. Why Hee-Joo was safe and unharmed, her mother blamed Hee-Joo who should have been hurt too. Even when she cried, her mother covered her mouth and forbade her from making a sound. That his biological daughter was deaf and his only son had died, but Hee-Joo survived. And if the chairman was angry then they would be expelled, so don't say anything. Because she was shocked, her mother asked Hee-Joo to cover her mouth and sacrifices her voice. They will only survive if the chairman feels guilty. That's why right now Hee-Joo pretends not to be able to talk, because her mother forced her like that. The nurse invites Hee-Joo's father to enjoy the air outside the room. She forgot to bring a blanket for Hee-Joo's father, and she went to get the blanket. But suddenly a man approached and pushed Hee-Joo's father's wheelchair. Hee-Joo's father only fell asleep when he was pushed, and the man had a scar on the back of his neck and had different colored eyes. Hee-Joo was confused when her father made a video call. She was even more shocked when she heard a man's voice and not her father's. The man asked for his cell phone. Did Hee-Joo still use it? He knew Hee-Joo took it and he liked what Hee-Joo did. He asked what was the real purpose of Hee-Joo making that call to Seo-eun. Hee-Joo answered a divorce and the man laughed happily, because he would also be angry if treated like that. So, call Seo-eun and keep calling him because her goal is the same as his. Hee-Joo can keep the phone, and the man shows someone's teeth, while telling Hee-Joo to promise not to stop in the middle of the road. Hee-Joo rushes to see her father at the nursing home. The nurse says that her father is not injured, he is currently under anesthesia and asleep. They apologize for being careless leaving her father alone. Then the police show Hee-Joo a tooth, but it doesn't belong to her father. They ask Hee-Joo to come to the police station to make a report. Then her father wakes up and mutters call him miss, and Hee-Joo feels so regret. While in the police car, they are confused because suddenly the car radio turns on by itself. Hee-Joo is very afraid that it was the man's doing and she also remembers the threats she received. She feels nauseous and the police stop the car on the side of the road. Hee-Joo gets out and vomits. Hee-Joo feels stupid for what she has done. She feels like her life has never been easy. She couldn't do anything. No one in this world was on her side. And suddenly there was a car, escorted by the police. It turned out that the person in the car was Seo-un. He walked over to Hee-Joo and Hee-Joo was surprised by Seo-un's arrival. Seo-un thanked the police for their hard work and then told them to leave. He would come to the police station and make a report. The police were a bit surprised and asked about his relationship with Hee-Joo. And Seo-un answered them that she was family and that Hee-Joo was his wife. Seems like Seo-un is starting to open up to the existence of his wife, Hong Hee-Joo. Before the confession about his wife, Seo-un received a call from the hospital where his father-in-law was being treated. They reported that they could not find his father-in-law, Mr. Nam Jun. And Seo-un's number was registered as an emergency contact, so they contacted him. Because it was a family matter, the president told him to use his car because it was faster and safer. That's why Seo-un came to pick up Hee-Joo with a police escort. After he admitted that Hee-Joo was his wife, he asked the two policemen to keep their personal information confidential for the time being. And the two policemen guaranteed the safety of Seo-un's secret. Seo-un explained that he found out about her father-in-law's incident because the nurse had his number and he planned to transfer her father-in-law to a safer hospital. He couldn't believe that the caller would go this far. From now on, Hee-Joo doesn't need to worry about her father because Seo-un will take care of him. Then Hee-Joo cried so hard that she made a sound, and Seo-un was a bit surprised because Hee-Joo made a sound. Hee-Joo fell silent. She spontaneously cried and accidentally made a sound because maybe she couldn't hold back her sadness anymore. Seo-un didn't tell Hee-Joo to stop crying, so she could cry as much as she wanted, and Hee-Joo cried so hard by making a sound. Yuri met Sang-woo at a food stall. She felt that Sang-woo was there just to try to meet her. But Sang-woo did live in an area near where Yuri worked, in Yeondo. Suddenly, Yuri guessed that Sang-woo had a crush on Hee-Joo and Sang-woo choked in shock when he heard that. That's because Sang-woo once said that he loved one-sidedly, like fans. Then Sang-woo changed the subject and felt that Yuri was the one who liked Seo-un. Then Yuri talked about Seo-un's family, that his family was a famous political family. His grandfather was a high-ranking official who had held all positions except president, while his father was a strong presidential candidate. His family were ministers or former ministers, prosecutors, mayors, and council members. Of course he married the daughter of a famous family, the eldest daughter of Chairman Hong from the Chingwon Daily. Seo-un took Hee-Joo to a hotel and he asked Hee-Joo to wash her face and nose because Hee-Joo had been crying. After washing her face, Hee-Joo tried to focus again. Then Seo-un invited Hee-Joo to sit down and talk. As Hee-Joo knows, lately there has been something bothering them. Hee-Joo's car, Seo-un's office, and even Hee-Joo's father's nursing home. Seo-un still hasn't filed a police report, but if it continues then there's no other choice. If Hee-Joo is the victim, then the police will dig up information, so before that happens, Seo-un asks her to tell what Hee-Joo is hiding. Seo-un could force Hee-Joo to talk, but he doesn't want to because they are not close enough to interfere. Then he tells Hee-Joo to eat before meeting Seo-un's parents and Seo-un meets them first. Because if Hee-Joo meets them, then Hee-Joo will be tense, so don't force herself. When Seo-un gets out of the elevator, it seems like someone is taking pictures of him. Then, he goes into a room where his father and mother are enjoying a meal. His father asks Seo-un to contact Hee-Joo, but Seo-un says that his wife is not feeling well. He asks his father to talk right away, because he only has an hour. It turns out, after eating, Hee-Joo fell asleep and she was shocked after seeing the time. His father asked Seo-Un to come when her father was making a TV show on a special episode of Presidential Candidates. Then Hee-Joo entered the room and her mother-in-law told her to sit down. Other presidential candidates invited their children, daughters-in-law, even dogs and cats, to promote themselves. But her father's only pride was his son, Paik Sa-Eon. And suddenly her father asked about Hee-Joo's older sister, Hong Ina. It seems that his in-laws had no intention of giving up their eldest daughter from the start. They were afraid that he would lose the election, so they gave her disabled daughter as a replacement. Even though she was lowly, Hee-Joo should have been able to prove her worth. Why couldn't she do anything? Then Seo-Un brought in a camera. It turned out he knew that someone was taking pictures of him. The man was his father's order to make news that spokesperson Paik Sa-Eon had dinner with his father, Paik Yoo-Yeon. Seo-Un felt that his father was putting too much pressure on him because he would determine his own participation in the election. Coercion, threats and subtle manipulation, don't even think about it. His father got angry and threw a glass and Seo-Un quickly pulled Hee-Joo so that she wouldn't be hit by the glass. His father threatened Seo-Un that if he stepped out of his shadow, then Seo-Un could be completely destroyed. And Seo-Un knew that his father would be trying to make him give up. But his father can be a presidential candidate because of his grandfather, so at least go through the rest himself. Don't whine and force him to support. And then Seo-Un and Hee-Joo leave the room. In the elevator, Seo-Un doesn't want to let go of her hand. He is sure that Hee-Joo wants to divorce him because she married only as a substitute and can't talk. So Hee-Joo can't defend herself when her in-laws are ranting. But Seo-Un comforts her that they can replace their children easily, so don't listen to them. Hee-Joo gets a video call from her friends. They give their support because Hee-Joo will take the test to become a translator at the presidential office. And Seo-Un will also support Hee-Joo. But Hee-Joo is still worried that if she passes then their family will know. Then Seo-Un asks how long she wants to live as an obedient child. Isn't she sick of always obeying others? This is the right time to prove that Hee-Joo is useful. Mr. Park submits a report on Sang-woo that there are many videos on his channel about unsolved cases related to arson and bombs. It seems that he is very knowledgeable about explosions and arson. Then recently, he appeared on a crime report on one of the TV stations, HBC. It was a crime mystery show. Hee-Joo took a selection test to become a translator at the presidential office. This was a practical test and they had to translate from a video recording. It turned out that it was a video of Seo-Un doing a press conference and Hee-Joo seemed to have memorized the contents of the news. She did sign language and it turned out that Seo-Un was monitoring her from inside his office. He watched it with concentration and then he called his coworker. Suddenly, he entered the selection room and told Hee-Joo to answer his questions. He was curious if Hee-Joo already knew the script because Hee-Joo translated it before he even spoke. Hee-Joo replied that it was her practice video. Then Seo-Un would play another video and Hee-Joo translated it. Seo-Un watched it seriously and changing other videos, but Hee-Joo can still translate them fluently. Seo-Un feels that Hee-Joo practiced with all those videos and why is she so familiar with all the videos? That's because Hee-Joo practiced a lot with his videos, even though the videos were chosen randomly without caring about the year. But her hands move along with Seo-Un's voice. Is that a coincidence? And Hee-Joo answers, she's like that because she's crazy and the people in the room smile. Hee-Joo is obsessed with Seo-Un's direction because she dreams of becoming a sign language interpreter for a government agency, so she practices excessively. She studies a lot about how So-eun's upper lip and upper teeth move when determining the point of articulation. She can guess the consonants from the sounds his tongue makes on the roof of his mouth, so her hands can be faster when guessing, and she imitates, practices and deepens it. But So-eun doesn't like it because Hee-Joo can't talk. How will she communicate with the spokesperson team? Then Hee-Joo answered, she would teach sign language, because So-eun had to be able to sign language, to know if the translator was conveying the message well. So, So-eun could communicate more easily with Hee-Joo. Then So-eun wanted to test it again. He would read a document that she had never seen before. And Hee-Joo practiced it very well, and it turned out that So-eun talked about a married couple. The two of them had lived together without being able to open up to each other. Would the situation be different if they were more honest in showing their feelings? If they only tried now, would they be able to live like other couples? But today it's like a mind game. The couple are still investigating each other. Ironically, their behavior turns out to be very similar. After that, So-eun feels that's enough, so he ends it. Hee-Joo visits her father, who has moved to a hospital. His room is wider and more comfortable. Hee-Joo apologizes to her father and that the incident will not happen again. When Hee-Joo asks about the gift on the table, suddenly her father says this, don't worry about that, no matter what happens, Dad will protect Hee-Joo. Hearing that, Hee-Joo guesses that So-eun is visiting her father. At the same time, So-eun is very warm, but also cold, very cruel, but also kind. Hee-Joo thinks she knows him well, but it seems she was wrong. When So-eun was a teenager, there was a party and the dish was sushi. It seemed So-eun didn't like the dish. Then her mother brought food to So-eun, because it was impolite not to eat what was served. And So-eun was forced to eat it, then he threw it up again. She saw Hee-Joo, who was forbidden to eat by her mother, even though she was hungry. When Hee-Joo takes the leftover food, So-eun pulls her hand and invites her to exchange food with him. Hee-Joo is very happy and eats the food with gusto. A beautiful woman is seen at the airport. It turns out she is Hong Aina, Hee-Joo's older sister. And Hee-Joo gets a notification from social media showing that Aina is already in Korea. In the past, Hee-Joo was forced to replace Aina to marry So-eun. Her mother was blinded because her in-laws were presidential candidates, so she forced her to get married. When giving the wedding ring to Hee-Joo, So-eun said that if the owner returned, Hee-Joo had to return the ring. Hee-Joo called So-eun again using 400 and SIX's cell phone. Previously, So-eun had asked what she would get if he got rid of Hee-Joo, and Hee-Joo answered that So-eun would get Aina. Because from the start So-eun and his family wanted Aina. Hee-Joo is just a puppet, so quickly fix Hee-Joo as soon as possible. According to So-eun, 406 didn't know anything. Before Aina disappeared, the person she met before the wedding was So-eun. They had made an agreement, and because of that agreement, Aina would never be able to become So-eun's wife. Hee-Joo was very surprised and just found out. Suddenly So-eun pressed the door password and Hee-Joo was shocked and hid her phone in the cupboard. So-eun thought Hee-Joo was asleep after a hard day. So-eun informed that he would attend Changwon's daily birthday party tomorrow. Hee-Joo was confused whether So-eun actually knew that his sister had returned to Korea. Changwon's daily birthday party was held. The chairman and So-eun's father cut the cake side by side. Hee-Joo came alone to the event and her mother asked her to follow her. Her mother asked about her father because he was suddenly transferred to the hospital. Then Hee-Joo answered that So-eun was the one who transferred him, and her mother was shocked because So-eun knew about Hee-Joo's father. Hee-Joo felt that her mother was only worried about the chairman, but not her father. Her mother didn't care about him, and then her mother took off Hee-Joo's jacket and made her dress look sexy. INA's friends were in the toilet and discussed about Ina, who didn't come to the party. She had never appeared in public after getting married, and now her position is very important because she will become a daughter-in-law president. They think INA's sister is weird because she seeks attention. She comes to the party and follows Ina like a shadow. It turns out that Hee-Joo is in the toilet and hears their conversation. Hee-Joo sees Seo-Un surrounded by women. She takes a drink and goes upstairs. Then she calls Seo-Un using 406 cell phone. Because he doesn't pick up for a long time, Hee-Joo feels that he doesn't care about Hee-Joo or 406. Then Seo-Un picks up the phone and tells her to talk. His fiancée disappeared the day before the wedding and Hee-Joo appears as a replacement. Seo-Un must be unhappy. Who else would accept Hee-Joo? Because Hee-Joo is quite gloomy. She's not good at socializing. She's just an extra page included with Ina. She hates rich families, but is comforted by luxury. She's a coward who kneels to money. But Seo-Un feels that Hee-Joo isn't gloomy. She likes to observe her surroundings. People are rude to her first, which makes her not want to socialize. And she also doesn't kneel to money. She only loves her mother. There are times when Seo-Un hates eating and talking with his mouth. He is surrounded by greedy, noisy and troublesome people. Somehow when he looks at Hee-Joo, he can breathe a sigh of relief. And Hee-Joo is not an additional page, but a completely new language. She repeats the same hand gesture until she becomes herself, so don't call her wife like that. But Hee-Joo is sad. Why does Seo-Un treat Hee-Joo like she's invisible? Why did Seo-Un forbid Hee-Joo to think that they were a couple? Suddenly Seo-Un arrived at the top of the building and saw Hee-Joo holding a cell phone. They were both shocked and looked at each other. It seems that Seo-Un knows that Hee-Joo is the caller 406. Previously Seo-Un came to the police station to make a report when Hee-Joo's father was kidnapped. They were relieved to know that Seo-Un's wife was fine because that day she was very shocked. They thought his wife had a panic attack because her face was pale and she was screaming loudly. Seo-Un was shocked and couldn't believe it when he found out that Hee-Joo was screaming. Then they gave the car dashboard recording and it was seen that Hee-Joo was panicking, talking and screaming loudly, wanting to get out of the car. Knowing that, Seo-Un was very sad and frustrated. How can someone who can talk pretend not to be able to talk for a very long time? How sad is his wife's life all this time? How will Seo-Un be after finding out that his wife is the caller who bothered him and also his wife is not mute? We are waiting for the next episode only on this channel. Thank you.